What happens when a Hollywood star known for her poise, precision, and razor-sharp wit walks onto a daytime talk show expecting a routine interview, and instead finds herself locked in a verbal chess match on live television? What happens when polite smiles harden, applause turns uneasy, and a single question slices straight through rehearsed answers? This is the moment when Emily Blunt faced Sunny Hostin on The View, and nothing went the way anyone expected. Before we dive deeper, subscribe to the Truth Narrator right now, hit that like button, and comment below, because stories like this only get more explosive as they unfold. The studio lights were warm, almost deceptively so, washing the stage in soft hues of pastel blues and creams. The audience buzzed with that familiar daytime TV energy, clapping hands, eager faces, the promise of charm and laughter. Emily Blunt stepped out with the confidence of someone who had done this 100 times before. Her posture was relaxed, her smile genuine, the kind that disarms a room before a single word is spoken. She waved, paused to acknowledge the applause, and took her seat at the long table, folding her hands neatly as she leaned in. Sunny Hostin watched her closely. From the outside, her expression was calm, professional, even welcoming. But behind that practiced composure was a focus sharp enough to cut glass. Sunny wasn't just another host tossing softball questions. She had built a reputation on pressing where others skimmed, on turning friendly conversations into moments of confrontation that lingered long after the credits rolled. The opening exchanges were smooth. Compliments about Emily's latest project, light laughter about accents, a quick anecdote that drew easy applause. Emily laughed easily, her voice warm, her eyes sparkling as she played along. For a few minutes, it felt like exactly what viewers expected: star power meeting daytime charm. Then Sunny shifted in her chair. It was subtle, so subtle most people missed it. A small inhale, a pause just a beat longer than necessary. When she spoke again, her tone was still polite, but the question landed differently, like a stone dropped into still water. "You've spoken before," Sunny said, tilting her head slightly, "about being selective with roles and about the responsibility that comes with influence. Do you ever worry that Hollywood sometimes pushes narratives that don't reflect the realities most women face?" The applause faded faster than usual. Emily's smile didn't disappear, but it tightened at the edges. For a fraction of a second, her eyes flickered, not fear, not anger, but calculation. The audience leaned forward, sensing the temperature change, even if they couldn't name it yet. "That's an interesting way to frame it," Emily replied carefully. "I think storytelling is about exploring perspectives, not prescribing lives. Films aren't instruction manuals." A few claps echoed, hesitant but supportive. Sunny nodded, but she didn't let the moment pass. "Of course," she said, "but when stories are repeated over and over, they shape expectations. Especially for young women watching." The air thickened. You could feel it in the way the audience quieted, in the way the other hosts shifted slightly in their seats. This was no longer small talk. This was a crossroads. Emily leaned back, crossing her legs with deliberate calm. "I actually think it's a bit unfair," she said, her British accent sharpening just enough to underline her point, "to suggest that actors bear sole responsibility for societal expectations. That's a much bigger conversation than any single film or interview." There it was, the first spark. Sunny's eyebrows lifted just a touch. "I'm not saying sole responsibility," she replied, voice steady, eyes locked on Emily. "But influence is influence, whether we like it or not." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some nodded. Others shifted uncomfortably. Emily inhaled slowly, as if grounding herself. "I don't shy away from complex female characters," she said. "If anything, I seek them out. But complexity doesn't always align with everyone's definition of reality. And that's okay." Sunny's smile returned, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Do you think," she asked, "that sometimes that complexity comes from a position of privilege that many women don't share?" This time, the silence was absolute. Emily blinked once. The studio felt smaller, the lights brighter. She could have deflected. She could have laughed it off. Instead, she leaned forward. "I think," she said slowly, "that reducing conversations to privilege versus authenticity oversimplifies the very issues we're trying to discuss. And frankly, it risks silencing voices rather than amplifying them." A sharp intake of breath from somewhere in the audience. Applause broke out, louder now, more divided. Sunny held her gaze, unflinching. "But conversations like this," Sunny replied, "are exactly how voices get heard." For a split second, neither woman spoke. Two strong wills, two carefully controlled expressions colliding in real time. Viewers at home felt it. The sense that something unscripted was unfolding, something raw and unpredictable. Emily smiled again, but this time it was different. Not defensive. Not dismissive. It was the smile of someone ready to stand her ground. And conversations, she said, require space for disagreement. The audience erupted, half applause, half stunned murmurs. Cameras caught every micro-expression, every flicker of tension. What had begun as a routine interview was now a live public reckoning. And it was only just beginning. The applause that followed Emily's last line didn't settle the room. It fractured it. Some clapped hard, almost defiantly. Others hesitated, hands half raised, unsure which side they were supposed to be on. On the panel, the other hosts exchanged quick glances. The kind that happen when everyone realizes the interview has slipped off the rails and there's no clean way back. Sunny Hostin didn't look away. She let the noise breathe, let the tension swell instead of rushing to smooth it over. That pause was deliberate. On live television, silence can be louder than shouting, and Sunny knew exactly how to use it. Disagreement is healthy, Sunny said at last, her voice calm but edged with steel. But when disagreement comes from a place of power, it hits differently. Emily Blunt tilted her head slightly, studying Sunny now not as a host, but as an opponent. Power, she echoed. You mean visibility. Those aren't the same thing. A few audience members murmured approval. Others stiffened. The camera cut briefly to a wide shot of the studio, capturing faces locked in concentration, brows furrowed, mouths slightly open. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was a debate unfolding in real time, with no script and no safety net. Sunny folded her hands on the table. Visibility creates power, she replied. When millions are watching, the choices you make, the roles you accept, they send messages whether you intend them to or not. Emily exhaled slowly. Inside, she felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the kind she usually harnessed on film sets during emotionally demanding scenes. But this wasn't a scene. There were no retakes. No director to call cut. I don't disagree that stories matter, Emily said, choosing each word carefully. What I disagree with is the idea that actors should become moral gatekeepers for society. That's not art, that's censorship. The word hung in the air like smoke. Sunny's eyes narrowed, just slightly. No one's asking for censorship, she said. They're asking for accountability. At that, Emily's composure cracked, not shattered, but bent enough for the audience to feel it. She leaned forward again, palms pressing lightly against the table. Accountability to whom? She asked. And according to whose standards? Because those standards change depending on who's holding the microphone. A ripple of applause surged through the crowd, louder now, more confident. The energy had shifted. This was no longer Sunny guiding the conversation. This was Emily pushing back. Sunny nodded once, acknowledging the point without conceding it. That's exactly why conversations like this matter, she said. Because for a long time, certain voices didn't get the microphone at all. Emily's gaze softened for a moment. And I support that, she replied. Truly. But support doesn't mean silence when I'm being boxed into a narrative that doesn't fit. The other host stirred. One opened her mouth as if to jump in, then thought better of it. The tension between Emily and Sunny had become the gravitational center of the room, pulling all attention toward it. Sunny turned slightly toward the audience. Let me ask you this, she said, gesturing with an open hand. Do you ever consider how your success story might feel to women who don't see themselves reflected in it? Emily followed her gaze to the crowd. For a brief second, the weight of hundreds of eyes pressed down on her. She could see faces of all ages, all backgrounds, some curious, some skeptical, some quietly hopeful. I do, Emily said quietly. More than you might think. But inspiration doesn't come from pretending differences don't exist. It comes from honesty about them. The room stilled. Even Sunny paused, absorbing the shift in tone. I didn't grow up with a roadmap, Emily continued. I didn't walk into this industry thinking it owed me anything. I worked, I failed, I was told no repeatedly. That doesn't disappear just because I'm sitting here today. Sunny listened, her expression unreadable. And yet, she said, your experience isn't universal. Emily nodded. No, and it shouldn't have to be. The audience reacted in waves, applause swelling, then thinning, then swelling again. The camera caught Sunny leaning back now, reassessing, recalibrating. So where does responsibility lie? Sunny asked. If not with influential figures, then with whom? Emily didn't answer right away. She looked down at her hands, then back up, meeting Sunny's eyes squarely. With all of us, she said. Audiences, creators, critics, hosts, everyone in this room and everyone watching at home. Responsibility isn't something you hand off to the person in the spotlight and walk away from. A hush fell over the studio, followed by a slow, thoughtful clap from somewhere in the back. It spread, measured but sincere. Sunny smiled then, this time a real one. That, she said, is a fair point. For a moment, it seemed like the storm might pass. But live television has a way of escalating just when you think the peak has been reached. Sunny glanced down at her notes. There's one more thing, she said, eyes lifting again. You've spoken about feeling misunderstood by the media. Do you think moments like this contribute to that feeling? Emily let out a small, almost incredulous laugh. Moments like this, she replied, are exactly why. The audience gasped, then laughed nervously. Emily's eyes sparkled now, not with anger, but with resolve. Because no matter what I say, she continued, someone will frame it as defiance or denial, when really it's just dialogue. Sunny raised an eyebrow. And dialogue can be uncomfortable. Emily smiled. It should be. The applause this time was loud, sustained, impossible to ignore. Cameras zoomed in, capturing the intensity on both women's faces. Two strong personalities. Two perspectives. Neither backing down. And somewhere beyond the studio walls, viewers were already reaching for their phones, sensing that this wasn't just another interview. It was becoming a moment, one that would be replayed, dissected, and argued over long after the show went dark. The energy in the studio had shifted from sharp confrontation to something heavier, more electric. It wasn't anger anymore, it was anticipation. The kind that makes an audience forget to breathe. The View thrived on moments like this, but even by its standards, this exchange had crossed into rare territory. Sunny Hostin leaned back in her chair, fingers tapping lightly against her notes. For the first time, she seemed less like a prosecutor and more like a strategist reassessing the board. Across from her, Emily Blunt sat upright, shoulders squared, calm radiating from her in controlled waves. She wasn't retreating. She wasn't attacking. She was holding the line. Sunny broke the silence. You know, she said, voice measured. Some viewers would say this sounds like distancing yourself from the consequences of influence. Emily's eyes didn't flicker. And some viewers, she replied, would say this sounds like demanding perfection from flawed humans. The audience reacted instantly, half laughter, half applause. A woman in the front row nodded vigorously. A man a few seats back crossed his arms, unconvinced. The camera panned briefly, capturing the divided reaction before snapping back to the table. Sunny tilted her head. Do you think celebrities sometimes hide behind the word art to avoid accountability? Emily inhaled slowly, the way an actor does before delivering a line she knows will land hard. I think, she said, that sometimes commentators hide behind the word accountability to control narratives they don't like. A collective "oh" rippled through the audience. One of the hosts shifted in her chair, eyes widening. This wasn't just debate anymore. This was personal. Sunny's lips pressed together for a moment. When she spoke again, her tone sharpened. Control is a strong word. So is censorship, Emily replied evenly. The studio lights felt brighter now, hotter. Time seemed to stretch, each second thick with implication. Sunny leaned forward, elbows resting on the table. Let me be very clear, she said. I'm not questioning your talent. I'm questioning the system that elevates certain voices while marginalizing others, and the responsibility of those inside it. Emily nodded once, acknowledging the distinction. And I'm questioning the fairness of placing systemic failures on individual shoulders, she said. Especially when those individuals are expected to smile while carrying it. Applause burst out, louder and more unified than before. Emily's words had struck a nerve. Sunny glanced briefly toward the audience, then back at Emily. Do you feel attacked right now? Sunny asked suddenly. The question landed like a punch. Emily blinked, genuinely surprised. For a moment, the actress dropped her media-trained polish. No, she said honestly. I feel challenged. Sunny raised an eyebrow. There's a difference? There is, Emily replied. An attack tries to silence you. A challenge invites you to speak. The audience erupted. This time, there was no hesitation, just sustained applause. Even a few of the hosts joined in, clapping softly, reluctantly. Sunny exhaled, a small smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. Fair enough, but she wasn't done. Let's talk about the audience watching at home, Sunny continued. Women who feel unseen, unheard. When they hear you say responsibility is shared, do you worry it sounds like deflection? Emily's gaze softened again, and when she spoke, her voice carried a quieter intensity. I worry more about what happens if we stop trusting people to think critically, she said. If we reduce everything to blame instead of conversation. A hush settled over the room. I've played women who are strong, Emily went on, and women who are broken and women who are neither. None of them are meant to be templates. They're mirrors. And mirrors don't tell you who to be. They show you who you are. The silence after that was profound. Even Sunny seemed momentarily disarmed. You're very articulate about this, Sunny said. But not everyone has your platform. That's true, Emily replied, which is why I'm careful not to speak for everyone. Sunny nodded slowly. And yet, by being here, you are speaking. Emily smiled faintly. I'm responding. Laughter rippled through the crowd, breaking the tension just enough to keep it from snapping. Sunny glanced at the clock, then back at Emily, as if weighing whether to push further. One last question, she said. Do you think interviews like this are productive? Emily didn't answer immediately. She looked around the studio, at the audience, the hosts, the cameras capturing every breath. I think they're necessary, she said finally. Productive? That depends on what we do with them afterward. Sunny held her gaze. And what do you hope happens after this one? Emily met her eyes without flinching. I hope people argue. I hope they disagree. And I hope they listen, not just to me or to you, but to each other. The applause that followed was thunderous. The tension hadn't vanished, but it had transformed, no longer combative, but charged with something deeper, more unsettling. Sunny smiled, a complex expression of respect and unresolved challenge. Well, she said, mission accomplished. As the segment moved toward its close, the audience sensed it too. This wasn't going to end when the cameras stopped rolling. Somewhere beyond the studio, clips were already being cut, tweets already being typed, opinions already hardening. Because what had just happened wasn't a clash designed for entertainment. It was a spark. And sparks, once seen, have a way of starting fires. The applause rolled on longer than anyone expected, spilling over the edges of the segment like an aftershock. Even as the cameras pulled back and the producers signaled a transition, the energy in the studio refused to settle. The View had seen heated moments before, but this one felt different. Less like a clash engineered for ratings and more like a live nerve exposed under bright lights. As the audience finally quieted, Sunny Hostin straightened her notes, her expression composed but thoughtful. Across from her, Emily Blunt took a measured breath, the faint rise and fall of her shoulders betraying the adrenaline still coursing through her. The polite smiles returned, but they were altered now, reshaped by what had just transpired. And we'll be right back, Sunny said to camera, professional as ever. The red light dimmed, but the moment didn't end. A low hum filled the studio as the audience whispered to one another, heads turning, phones discreetly lifted despite the rules. People weren't just reacting, they were processing. Some faces glowed with admiration, others with skepticism, but no one looked indifferent. Emily leaned slightly toward the other hosts, exchanging brief, courteous words. She laughed softly at something said off mic, but her eyes drifted back toward the audience, as if measuring the room one last time. Sunny watched her from the corner of her eye, not confrontational now, but contemplative. The tension between them had shifted into something more complex, respect tangled with unresolved disagreement. When the show returned from break, the tone had changed. The conversation moved on, lighter topics introduced, but the weight of what had just happened lingered like static in the air. Every laugh felt a bit forced. Every segue carried the echo of that earlier exchange. And then it was over. As the credits rolled and the audience stood, the applause was loud but uneven, charged with opinion rather than obligation. Emily rose, waving briefly, her smile genuine but tired. Sunny stood as well, meeting her halfway for a polite, public-facing exchange. Two professionals acknowledging a moment neither would soon forget. Backstage, producers buzzed with quiet urgency. Phones vibrated. Screens lit up with notifications stacking faster than they could be read. Someone whispered, "It's already trending." By the time Emily stepped into her car, clips were circulating online. Short excerpts stripped of context. Long threads dissecting every word. Headlines forming in real time. Emily Blunt pushes back on live TV. Sunny Hostin challenges Hollywood privilege. Awkward or iconic? The view moment everyone's talking about. Within hours, social media was split down the middle. One side praised Emily's composure, calling her response articulate, measured, brave. She didn't dodge, one comment read. She stood her ground. Fans shared clips of her calmest lines, framing them as a masterclass in handling pressure. The other side rallied behind Sunny, applauding her for asking questions others were afraid to ask. This is why these conversations matter, a viral post declared. Discomfort is the point. Think pieces followed. Podcasts cued emergency episodes. Entertainment journalists debated whether the moment signaled a deeper shift in how celebrities were expected to engage with cultural critique, or whether it was simply another flashpoint in an already polarized landscape. Emily, meanwhile, stayed silent. No tweets. No Instagram stories. No carefully worded statement. Her absence only fueled the conversation. Each hour of silence interpreted a dozen different ways. Some called it dignity. Others called it avoidance. Sunny did speak briefly. In a short follow-up interview, she described the exchange as necessary and respectful, emphasizing that disagreement didn't mean disrespect. Her words were calm, but the firestorm continued. Viewers at home replayed the segment again and again, pausing on facial expressions, analyzing tone, debating intent. Group chats lit up. Comment sections overflowed. People who had never watched the show suddenly had strong opinions about it. What lingered most wasn't who won. It was the unease. The realization that the conversation had no neat conclusion. That both women had spoken truth as they saw it. And that those truths didn't align. The audience wasn't handed a verdict. They were handed a question. And questions demand answers. Days later, the moment was still alive. Memes softened its edges. Essays sharpened them. And somewhere in the noise, the original exchange remained. Two voices, live, unfiltered, refusing to retreat. That's the thing about moments like this. They don't fade when the cameras shut off. They evolve. They become mirrors for whatever the viewer brings to them. Beliefs, frustrations, hopes. So now the question shifts to you. When you watched it unfold, whose words stayed with you? Did Emily's call for shared responsibility resonate? Or did Sunny's insistence on accountability strike closer to home? Was it confrontation, or was it conversation? Tell us what you think in the comments. Share your perspective, because this story doesn't end on television. And if you want more cinematic, intense, and unfiltered stories like this, subscribe to The Truth Narrator. This is where the moments that shake culture don't just get replayed. They get remembered.